Hello, hello. This is one of my dearest friends, Riva. She is one of my favorite humans in the whole entire world. So I am so excited for this episode, and I feel so much gratitude to have her here with us today. So, Riva, go ahead and give yourself a little introduction and tell them about who you are and what you do.
Yes. So thank you, Katie Waves, for having me on your podcast. I feel so honored to have you in my life. One, just as the beautiful, bubbly ray of sunshine that you are. And yeah, just it's amazing to witness you and all of the growth in the short time that we met. But we'll get to that story in a minute. So my name is Dr. Reva Z. Robinson, if you're looking at my little label underneath me. But I also have an alter ego named Coco, which some of you might know. But whatever identity, background, profession, I've done a lot of things. So I'm a functional medicine doctor by training. Had my own telemedicine practice for about 5 years, gave that up a couple years ago due to burnout, but I made the transition over to functional medicine, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what that is, it really is the approach to medicine that focuses on getting to the root cause instead of just treating symptoms. So I focus a ton on all the fun lifestyle stuff that people either run away from or they're so confused from all the misinformation out there. And I help people make sense of it all and implement sustainable lifestyle plans to help them heal or help them optimize their well-being if they're already healthy. And so that is the professional side of things. But what really has lit me up, which interestingly, I started my functional medicine journey at the same time I started my journey as a bikini competitor. Very, like, not many people know that part of the story, how those two came into my life at the very same time. I had, and here's this will tell you a lot just about my tendencies and why I've burnt out like at least 7 times in my life, like literally like a cat with 9 lives. But we went on this fabulous vacation to French Polynesia, cruise all around the islands. But then I was very determined to start my functional medicine education, which day one was the day after I finished this cruise. And so when we were flying back from Tahiti, like, oh, well, our flight lands in LA. Okay, the conference is in Huntington Beach. Huntington Beach, guess who was living in Huntington Beach at that time that I didn't know? Kind of
Me there.
crazy. Like, I wonder if I like saw you in Walmart or something and like
I
didn't
we
even
might
know it was
have.
you.
Like
That's
we
crazy.
probably did.
So land from Tahiti, Uber my way to LA, start this conference the next day, and have like 5 super intense days of diving into the core of functional medicine, like gut health, hormones, detox, energy, like all these really vague seeming topics that are now coming to a lot more light due to, just thankfully there's more information out there, but not as great. There's a lot of misinformation because there's more information disseminated. So diving deep in all this stuff and really seeing like, wow, like this is the missing piece of what I didn't get in medical school. Like learning, like we had one, maybe two, actually we had two nutrition lectures, but they were actually the same lectures that I had an undergrad because it was the same professor that taught me at Rice University who also taught at Baylor College of Medicine. So I learned nothing new about nutrition in medical school. And here I am supposed to be seeing, go out after 4 years and start treating and healing people and giving them all the tools that they need to be healthy. At least, that's what I thought medicine was supposed to be, but it wasn't. So anyway, so go to this functional medicine conference, start filling in all these gaps. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Now, mind you, right before this vacation and this conference, I was like, all right, I'm going to do my first bodybuilding competition why not start two really big things at the same time? Because why not? It's burnout. Like I live on the edge, right? So I remember being in the conference hall one day and like actually like submitting like the scariest payment because I had to pay for like all 12 weeks of the prep ahead of time and being like, okay, click, I'm doing this. All right, signed up and like started getting workouts from my coach within a few days. And I'm at this conference, I'm learning all the things and overtraining at the same time because that's how bodybuilding is. And so that's how this whole journey started of, well, that's not how it started because I've been doing the most my whole life. So let's rewind a few years.
This is
I can,
Reva in a
this is me.
nutshell,
This is
doing
me.
everything at one time,
Yeah,
hoping
yeah,
not to
yeah.
burn out.
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's fine. It's gonna be fine this time. I promise. Like, I've got this. It's great. I've got this. No, really, I've got this. No, 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 we're good. No, I got this. Yeah.
I'm not
So
convincing you, I'm convincing me.
I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. No. So, how did I develop these tendencies? Well, when you grow up as the child of two doctors who are running their own medical practice, who are doing a lot, and they're pretty big public figures in our community. And so it's like they're constantly pouring themselves out into everybody. And I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. And I admire them for the way that they just brought everybody in and gave so much. And there was never really a lot of rest. Like rest wasn't really a thing. Like our vacations we're like always like, okay, let's do Europe, let's do 5 countries in 12 days type of situation. Like
Let's do the most always.
always. And so that was normal. And it's, one thing when you have the adrenals of a 10-year-old, and it's another thing when you're 37 years old and you've been doing it all your life and your adrenals are like, no more. No. So I grew up just with this high high paced lifestyle. I was an Olympic hopeful gymnast, and like I grew up in the time where like gymnastics still kind of is the highlight of the Olympics, but like for me, the highlight golden era of gymnastics was the Magnificent Seven, the 1996
In the
Olympics.
90s, yes, I remember that. Like, we were dialed in
Oh
watching
man,
that,
like
dialed
everyone in America,
in.
the whole
Oh,
world,
it
whole
brought us
world.
all together. Like, I felt like when I think of that time, I'm like, oh, that was like a time I feel like everyone was really connected around the Olympics and gymnastics. Like, that
Mm-hmm.
was such a big deal. Like, I mean, I remember the Olympics, but like the gymnastic part, and it was that like, and that was around the time figure skating was really like show.
Yep.
So it was like, I
Michelle
remember those,
Kwan.
yes, that
Those
era
days.
of, yeah. So that is what stands out to me, like that time.
Totally. Yeah. So like get this, like they were like my contemporaries. Like I wasn't competing with them. They were like, a few years ahead of me, but I had the same choreographer for my floor routines that they worked with. So Bella Caroli, unfortunately has had a scandal cloud his name with the whole doctor situation at his camp, but Bella Caroli. My head coach used to coach with Bella. And so we would go and train at Bella's gym at the weekend, and Dominic Mociano would be there, and Kim Zameskel sometimes. And like, we'd be there like in the corner watching, like, oh my gosh, like our heroes, like on the same equipment that we were going to be doing. Like my floor routine has like some of the same moves that, Dominique's, and like, oh my gosh, like so like we're growing up next to superstars. And yes, I was a superstar too in my own right, but gymnastics is just one of those sports where it's like you are always critiquing yourself. It's never good enough. You always have to be better, always thinking about that next level that you're getting to. Your coaches are always comparing you against your next teammate and saying, do it more like Shanae or do it more like Jessica or whatever. Like it's just I grew up with so many maladaptive patterns that set me up to constantly burn out for the rest of my life. And I didn't recognize that until like maybe 10 years ago. So I was like, man, okay, so this wasn't just like a bodybuilding thing. It wasn't just med school burning me out in the dysfunctional healthcare system. It wasn't just, college and trying to like maintain all the, like, it was from infancy. Because one thing that I firmly believe is that, the maternal environments, like when we're in utero, we're basically bathing in all of the hormones, all the emotions, like everything in our mother's body. We're just like, mm, we're
We are
drinking it
soaking it
down. We're
in.
just like
We are that
soaking.
energy.
Yeah, yeah. So, mom, rest in peace, like she had a very high stress lifestyle. She had very horrible self-talk patterns. She, probably was already burnt out when she started having kids because she had made it through, college, med school, residency, then moving across the country to start your own medical practice and move to like a racist ass country town where, people look at you like you're animals. Like she went through some shit. And so you're going to have babies in this environment where there's some toxic ingredients in the baby formula. Just say that I can't even
Absolutely.
blame on her. Like she didn't have that same level of awareness that we do today of how emotions, how all of these things literally are chemicals that our body responds to that get embedded in our tissues. So I went through a nice space chunk of my life where I loved blaming my mom for all of her all of the ways that she set me up to fail because it was all her fault.
Me too.
I had
Like,
nothing to do.
right? Like, literally, like, mom, you're throwing a glass plate at my father while you're pregnant with me. And like, you wonder why I'm like screaming and shaking in my crib, like, as a baby, right? Like, okay. Okay. Yeah. Like, you wonder why we are this way.
Why am I this way? Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's been very peculiar, I'll say, like looking back and being like, oh, all of those things that I was like bitter and resentful for about my mom, those are actually like that's all on me. Because
Yeah.
like now that I'm aware of it, like I'm the one choosing to assign victimhood to this. It's like, yeah, that happened. I recognize that wasn't great, but I get to choose to move on. So another bit of the story that, comes up, which also I didn't share another reason I burnt out because I decided to write a book in 4 weeks.
And let me tell you, it's a great book. Let me tell you.
Yay. Well, thank you. So, my book is called More Than Enough: The Healing Journey to Love Yourself, Listen to Your Gut, and Live Your Truth. And this came about due to the mommy healing phase. So, like, this is like mom all in this. So, so yeah. So, like, where was I going with that book? The kind of
Your
hopping all
next
over the
phase of,
place.
well, that was
The
part
next,
of like your next phase of burnout, which is like,
right.
it's so interesting because what I'm hearing is like, mom was a major component to burnout in all realms of your life, which is
Oh yeah.
so interesting because, side note, I want to like, I think since we're talking about moms right now, I think like, let's throw this in there. The way that Riva and I bonded was through our really great friend, mutual friend, Jess. And we were both at her bodybuilding competition. And Jess was like, I just like knew you guys were supposed to meet. Like, this is just how it is. And like, I saw Riva and I'm like, this like radiant, beautiful human, like, look at her smile. She just like radiates. And so we get together once Jess is off stage, and all of a sudden, Reva, like, just like with this big smile, like the biggest smile, is like, I'm so glad you all guys. Like, me too. We just like gave each other like this big hug. And I know that's going to sound so crazy to some people, but when you've lived a life where our mothers have been such a pronounced, like, what at one point what we thought cause of pain, right? Cause of
Mm.
who we are and why we hurt and all of these things, and the negative things that we have experienced, or then the negative tendencies that we have created, came from a lot from our mothers, and the hold that we felt from our mothers. And obviously we've done a lot of healing and a lot of different work around it, but for us to like literally meet and like radiate these like smiles, and then her to just be like, I'm so glad my mom died. Me too. And it was just like, and we literally like just gave each other like the biggest hug with full excitement, like someone else gets it, like
I think that
this.
was our first I love you. Like I was like, I
Yeah,
love you.
yeah, like literally like love at first words, like I'm so glad.
So I'm
It's
trying
like,
to recall like how we got to that point of like bringing that, because I mean we dove
you
in
know,
like deep from the start. It's like we were talking about like releasing trauma and like all this stuff like within like 5 minutes of like meeting each other. And so
I
like so much of our conversation that day was like, you were sharing how you ended up in Texas, just like in all like the series of
craziness.
events and
Yeah.
everything, and just all these things lining up and things. I think so, maybe somehow the conversation got to that. We're just talking about turning things around for good, like the most.
Well, I think Jess was like, your moms are here. That's
Ah.
what she was like, your moms are here. Like, I feel them.
Mm,
Because Jess, Jess is so like intuitive and like in touch with that. So
mhm.
she was like, your moms are here. And then I think if I remember correctly, that's what sparked it. And we were like, yeah, yeah, I'm so glad. And it's like that, I think in itself was just like such a healing component. Like we just knew there was like so much healing in regards to whatever our relationship was going to turn into, because there was like this beautiful understanding of like something that most people look at you like, what the fuck? What do you mean? How dare you say that about
You're
your
so
mother?
hateful. I'm
Yeah,
like,
and we're
oh,
like, no, we actually love the shit out of them. Like, don't you
yeah.
worry. We love them, and we love that they're not here in their human form doing all the
Right,
human shit, because we
right.
feel their love like so much now. Like when Jess was like, they're here, like, yeah, we feel that love. And so
Hmm.
it's so interesting because that's how we connected, like literally,
Yeah.
and connected so deeply. And I think like that story had to be thrown into the mix because I mean, that says everything that I think we need to say about our relationship, our connection, and the understanding that we had from the jump.
Totally. And we're also a little bit sick and twisted too. So there's that part.
Who isn't that has experienced trauma? Like you,
Oh,
because you have
right.
to have like a sense of humor around stuff in order
Totally.
to, not, you don't have to, but I
Oh,
just think,
it's absolutely, I mean, I feel like you can't heal trauma without humor. It's like
yeah,
my eulogy at my mom's funeral was 10 things I hate about my mom, which was like literally in the church that I grew up with, like every pastor who had ever, been in the church over the past 37 years, like 10 things I hate about my mom was my message. And it was, again, like taking all of my mom's isms and turning them around for like the lessons that we all were presented with from her, whether we perceive it as good or bad. So, an example of one, my mom was always late. Always late. Like she could have, like, doesn't matter how much time ahead she started preparing, like she would always be like 20 minutes late to church. And oh my gosh, don't ask my dad like how much that pissed him off, but like always late. But I was like, but guess what? She was just teaching us all a valuable lesson in patience. So we had many opportunities to learn patience from my mom. And if you haven't learned patience yet, then that's on you because she gave you plenty of opportunity.
That is so funny because we used to say like my mom was going to be late to her own funeral. And essentially she was, because I put a halt to the funeral because of, our own shit that was going on. And she was years late to her own funeral. So, right? But
That's
like,
funny you say that because we're 2 years late and scattering my mom's ashes. We're finally going to get to do that in a week. So
she's
late to
late to
her,
her own
like we
funeral
had like
too.
a memorial with her ashes present, but for me, the cycle really isn't complete until you release them back into the earth. And so we're traveling to Trinidad and Tobago next week and finally getting to scatter her ashes and Blanchisseuse in that little village near where she grew up and used to bathe in the little river there. And so literally like taking her back to where she got her start. And like it's so important for us, timing. I think that's another big lesson in this whole burnout journey of me is like time is irrelevant. Why are we always rushing? Like, why was I rushing to, and going back to the whole burnout journey with bodybuilding, like rushing to become an IFBB pro, like rushing into the next competition, rushing through prep. Like, you get there and then what? Okay, so you made it. And then your mind's like, all right, so what's the next thing? And then, wait, why am I so tired? And why do I feel like shit? Oh, right, because I haven't given my mind, body, or spirit any time to rest in 30 however many years. So
Totally. Well, and like mom isn't mad about it. Mom doesn't care that it took you 2 years to go spread her ashes. Like my mom didn't care that it was 5 years till she was like in the ocean. Like shit, it doesn't matter. And then the other thing there is like, what a beautiful lesson in like, okay, so you take your time and how are you going to show up while you spread mom's ashes in a week versus 2 years ago when you hadn't done healing and processing, and like what a beautiful experience this is going to be because you didn't rush and do what you thought you had to do, the next thing, like I think that this is like a beautiful lesson in your whole journey, right? And like the burnout, the like not doing enough, not following like the course of what people say you should be doing, and allowing your soul to guide you to do it when the time is right, when you've taken the energy to take care of yourself and align with yourself. Like that experience is going to be so different than if you would have, had her funeral and then went straight there and like did it and like, okay, and her energy will feel that, like she is going to be with you like so freaking happy. Like
oh
such a
yeah.
such a cool lesson. I mean, because we're all about lessons. Like, what am I learning from this? What am I like? And so that to me is like such a beautiful life lesson and almost like a guiding thing from your mom. Like your mom is guiding you into that, like the lessons, the lessons that these women have taught us since they've passed. It's
Oh
like
man.
for me, I don't know if you feel this way, but let me know. I feel like it's far greater. I learned a lot from my mom when she was here, a lot of maybe what not to do more than what to do, but like
hmm
I've almost learned more of what to do since she's been gone. And
hmm
it's opened up my world in so many different ways where I feel like a lot of my resentment and things came from me learning what not to do from her. And it was like in her
hmm
human form. And
hmm
now that she's not here, I feel like I have learned what to do. And that is just pure love. Like she
hmm
couldn't give that to me when she was here in the human form, but it's
hmm
almost like they're so pure love and light that like they're guiding us into
Yeah,
what to do for the first time.
absolutely. And I think it was important for us to experience the what not to do first, because I think a lot of times we have to experience putting our hand on the flame and then be like, ouch, that's hot. Don't
A
do
couple
that.
times.
Yeah, like that hurt. Let me try it again.
Is it gonna change?
Okay, I got it. It might have cooled down. Oh, no. So, like, my experience with my mom has been exactly the same. And I mean, almost as soon as she passed, and I mean, I've been wired into the spirit realms very closely since I was a little kid. And I think as we grow older and grow more logical, I kind of discounted a lot of the things I was feeling and seeing, like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a weird coincidence. Oh, that's interesting. I'm thinking that, and then I see that show up over there. What? So almost as soon as my mom passed, like there were instant messages from her coming through, like instant downloads, like just like rapidly. And I think that's why the past couple years have also been like very intense. It's like the healing, like the expedited path of healing where things are like it's a lot for our nervous system to handle when it's like, oh my God, oh, like all these things dropping in all the time, all these connections to ancestors in different ways. Like my mom, and it used to like annoy the shit out of me so much when she would say this. It was like, that's just mom being her pious self again. And that she'd be like, I'm so much more spiritually mature than you are. And that's her Trinidadian accent. And I'd be like, okay, mom, I get it. Like, yes, you speak in tongues and shit. But I mean, she never clarified or elaborated like what she meant by that. And I'm pretty sure like what she was referring to is like, connecting to spirits and seeing things and hearing things. And I mean, and there was a lot of integration, like being there on her deathbed and like her last kind of the last day, full day I had where she was conscious with her and she was just pouring out. I was like, wow, we are a lot more alike than I ever realized. But she
Mm.
hadn't really shared because there were like certain things. This is I have to laugh, and this is the beauty of like, humor and trauma. So like my mom's death and that week and that experience is definitely like most traumatizing experience of my life. But there were so many moments where I was just like, this is one for the books. So here's my mom. I can't remember if I've shared this with anybody. Here's my mom, like on her deathbed and talking about like the Holy Spirit making her come. He was like, really? I know you know what I mean. I'm like, well, I know about energetic orgasm. Like that is definitely a thing. And like, okay, it's different nomenclature. She, the only spirit she believed in was a Holy Spirit. It's like that was like for her to have like what I'm guessing, like a full body orgasm and something that just like completely overtakes you like energetically. She called that the Holy Spirit. Here she is, like, the last like full conversation I'm having with my mom. And she's talking about, whole like asking them, and she's like, oh, I had to beg Jesus to stop. They just kept going and going and going. So there's that. But I'm like, it's like as weird as it sounds, like I do get what like I get where she's coming from. And then like my sister on the other side of the bed is kind of looking at me like, And I'm like, actually I do. Mm, I get her. And so it's like, yes, like we couldn't necessarily see eye to eye when it's just like, okay, like I'm kind of beyond the over spiritualized, the over religious, I don't know what religiosity, like the hyper religiosity that comes with a lot of people who is like, this way or the highway, which my mom very much was. And so it's like when we strip away any of the religion and get to the spirit of it all, we were talking about the same thing. It was just hard for me to hear when she's so like Bible beating about it and saying I'm so much more spiritually mature. And I'm like, well, okay, well, whatever you mean by that. But after that, and then it was like, okay, it's like I had some pretty mind-blowing conversations with my mom on her deathbed. But then like the visitations and the things that came afterwards were like so powerful because I was willing to open up and release the resistance and to see her for who she was and to see, be willing to see that we were the same all along. And then, okay, we can let go of all the resentment and all the hurt and frustration for how badly she damaged me. Like, I'm still here. I'm still standing. I still have the opportunity to move forward and create exactly what I want based off of what I know for sure I don't want. So I needed that foundation because God knows how indecisive I can be about what I want. So you gotta have a hard stop. It's like, okay, we know for sure this we don't want. There's a realm of things over here that I do want. Bodybuilding. You know, I definitely know that I want a home in Bee Cave. And I know that
I
I
love Bee Cave.
know I know that bodybuilding is in my future somehow, whether that's me competing in the NPC, IFBB someday, or maybe me starting my own league based on functional medicine and helping people do it in a healthy, sustainable way. Like I know these things I want. I don't necessarily know how they all come to be, but my mom and my experience with her has enabled me to like be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like reflect and be able to see, like, okay, this is what frustrated me before in the situation. For example, mom telling me I was throwing my life away when I dropped out of residency because I was burnt out and literally wanting to die. So I knew I did not want to be in conventional medicine. So over here, what I do want is to feel joyful. I know that I do want to serve people and feeling whole in their body. I know that bodybuilding has something to do with it because here's a population of people who are working so hard to prove that they are more than enough, to prove that my body is perfect, working so hard to get to the pro league. And then what? There's a population of people who are burnt out, crispy to the bone and needing support. And wow, I've experienced burnout 85 different ways. And what a blessing that I've seen it from every possible perspective so that I can serve these people over here who come from so many different backgrounds. I feel like I've had so many different lives, and that while that's turned my head and spun me around in so many different directions, I don't even know how to answer, what do you do? I'm like, shit, I don't know. Like, ask me
All
tomorrow,
the
it'll be something
things.
different. Like, what do I do? Life. Life is what I do. Healing.
No,
And
it's so,
so,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so it's because of the resentment and that hard, polar negative to all the things that I didn't want, that all the things that I do want can come into better focus.
Yeah, it's interesting because there were like two things that I'm so glad, because I was going to ask you and you just like blurted them out. Is it's almost like, so the like resentment, you now realize, kept you from seeing what your mom truly meant, right? Because we hear these words, and when she was on her deathbed, you were just more open to hearing what she had to say. It wasn't that she changed. She was
Right.
just saying, she was sending the same messages in the same manner, but you were more receptive because you knew it was kind of like your last time with her, versus like it, when we're in the thick of it, it's like so easy to reject what they're saying or put negative meaning, a negative spin on it because of our past experience. And so I think like what a beautiful way for you to heal that aspect of you and that part of you, to see like, oh, this is what she meant all along. And we are so much more alike than I would have ever liked to actually admit. But now I see it. And then this other thing that I see too is like, and I really it's so funny because this idea of like not or knowing what we want because of what we didn't have kind of thing, right? Like, so what
Mhm.
did we want to become? It's almost like they gave us, so they showed us what we didn't want, which allowed us to create the bridge to what we do want. And I think that that's even more, somewhat more powerful than just showing us and being an example of what, it's not that it's more powerful. I think it's as equally powerful, and I think our we were meant to walk that road, to
Mhm.
create our own road, and then, like, I truly believe we can, for our children, if we have children, we can be the example of what they can be, and like the beautiful example, and then their bridge from what they want to what they get will probably be like smoother. Ours are like more cobblestone, but that's because we were meant to have a cobblestone bridge. Like, we were meant to be
Mhm.
like a little bumpy and be like, like that's just
Yeah.
like kind of, you look at my, I mean, if you look at my human design chart, it like literally says that. Like, you're supposed to learn things the hard way. And so I think, like, for us, it's like them showing us what we didn't want allowed us to pave that cobblestone and do all these different things to lead us to what we want. And it's so sweet over here once we get there, because it's like, holy shit, like I never saw this before. Like, I never,
Mhm.
no one showed me that I could do this. And like, no one showed me that I could live in a manner where I don't have to burn out to get to what I want. We've like,
Mhm.
you were taught that you had to burn out, you had to
Work
work
hard.
really
Yeah,
hard.
you have to work hard. I mean, it's funny because my mom's motto was work hard, play hard. And I love that in a sense, but it's like you also burn out from working hard and then also playing hard. Like, where's the rest in this? Like, how
Like,
about work hard, rest hard?
yeah, or like work
'Cause-
with ease, play with ease. Like, what about that?
right.
Like,
Yeah,
work with
how
ease,
about not
have
work? How
fun.
about
How about
let's just
have fun?
how about fun? Exactly. And it's funny is, I mean, actually, I was just thinking about kind of my mind hopping around the different topics we could explore today. And, when I was building out the pillars of kind of like what I would base my content around for my new Instagram, the Give Me Some Cocoa account, where I started that, it's like I just really wanted a fresh start away from the, Dr. Riva, functional medicine doctor, body, but I was like, I want to explore more topics around sexuality, share more of my sexual expression. And sex has always been a big part of my coping and healing process. Like, we process emotions through our body. Now, there are maladaptive ways of doing that. There are better ways than others. But through this account, like, I was like, okay, well, what are the things in my life that have really enabled me to move through this process in a healthy way? And I came to my 5 F's. So fun being one of them, is that's like foundation of just life should be fun. And then of course, healing trauma. Definitely need fun in there. You can't just sit at home mourning all day long.
Yeah.
Although some people like to, it's like the days of like covering yourselves in ashes and like putting on, like what are they, like their paper sacks and whatnot. No, shit, I'm gonna dress as fabulous as I want or as cozy as I want in my bathrobe, whatever, it's gonna feel fun in my body. Like, I embody fun. So fun was one, family with an asterisk,
Do
because
explain.
sometimes you need space from the triggers to allow yourself to heal and the grieving. People grieve in different ways. And so, like, I definitely needed some space from certain family members in this process just so I could move through at my own rate. But family ultimately does help us heal. Like, I just think about going back to Thanksgiving last year, where we had a lot of my family from Trinidad there, and my mom being from Trinidad. When I see my Trinidad family, it feels like home. And so it's like, oh, I see my mom and my Aunt Arlene, and like I see my mom and my cousin, like it's so family brings us back closer to the ones we love. So third F, food, as food is life. And that spurred me to create my own kinky cooking show, F Girl Kitchen. So food has always been a big part of my relationship with my mom. Like I was always in the kitchen with her, helping her chop, helping her cook, and food is my love language. So anybody who comes over to my house, which
It's amazing. It is amazing.
I like it's just food. Like I'm an intuitive in so many ways, but food for me is just like, oh yeah, this is gonna taste good. Just this is how I cook. I'm just like, you can blindfold me, it'll still taste good. It's like food is how like I can literally feel like my grandma and my mom, like right here as I'm and granny too. She's like, hold on. Well, don't forget about the diamond tree kind of thing. So she's like, hold on, don't you forget. But when I'm in the kitchen and I get into these zones where I'm just like in the flow, it's like I'm in the space with my family in the kitchen back as a little girl in Trinidad, watching my granny make fry bake. I'm, watching grandma bake her pecan pies and watching mom, make spend way longer than she needed to chopping onions, like surgical precision, like
I love it.
oh, so it's like that's been a huge part of my healing process. Food, of course. Fitness is another one, moving our body. And I don't just mean like fitness in the sense of health influencers on Instagram and this workout and that. Like fitness, like we are made to move.
Mhm.
Humans, like that's why we have muscles and bones, and muscles are levers that pull them. Like we were made to move. And here we are sitting, and the tendency, yes, you're going to have times when you're grieving and you literally need to just be on your sofa, not moving and watching Netflix and crying, eating whatever the hell you want. There are times when that is so therapeutic to your soul in ways that medicine cannot explain. Like I swear, like the week after my mom died and we were there in College Station making arrangements and like people bringing all the food, and it's just like, damn, I was still on competition prep, mind you, and people are bringing like Olive Garden fettuccine Alfredo and breadsticks. And I tell you, like, I probably had like a third of a tub of an Alfredo. So that's just like dipping those breadsticks in there, like
So
going
good.
to that was like
So good.
orgasmically good. And I was losing weight too. I was like, well, I feel like that's another conversation. Grief, I feel, is a very energetically demanding. Like, so like
Mhm.
I was losing weight, eating probably 3 times more calories than normally did. Like I had probably like 2,000 calories worth of Alfredo sauce in one sitting.
And your body's just like powerhouse. Like
I
I'm
know.
doing it. I need this.
Just
I am
muscle
using so much
hungry.
energy right now. Like this is what I need.
Exactly. But back to the fitness. So like yes, we're gonna have times when we sit still and we eat the food and we do all that stuff, but we're made to live free moving lives. And so movement for me has taken many different forms over the past couple years in this grieving process. Like I've tapped more into erotic dance, and that was interestingly started to flow more into my life in that time, where like had a major blow up with my mom about 7 months before she died, which thank God that happened because that got us into therapy and working through all the things. She had no clue. She was absolutely clueless that I was still still struggling to feel worthy and to feel accepted by her. She was like, "Oh, I thought that you wrote a book on it. I thought you were better now."
I thought
Like,
we're good.
like, are you, come on, come on. It's like I didn't even invite you to my book launch party because I didn't want to be triggered by you. You just showed up yourself, and thank God she did. I'm glad she was there for that moment. But it's like, no, no, it's like you're still a work in progress, but moving through it so necessary. The dance that came through after that whole blow up with my mom and really digging into those parts of myself where emotions had settled. I found myself stretching and moving and dancing in the most awkward way that it felt like so orgasmically good. Just like, like writhing on the floor and doing weird shit. And Sean just like, what the hell? I'm just like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Don't mind me. Just working through
Yeah,
some shit over here.
exactly. But fitness should be about feeling good in our bodies, right? But we've been so programmed to believe it's why like people don't want to exercise. Oh, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to like work hard. I don't want to do this. Yeah, but there's 85 billion different ways that you can move your body. And especially whenever you're grieving, you got to move those emotions because that's how you process it. That's how you release it. That's how you're free to live a full life again. So we've covered 4 F's: fun, family, food, fitness. And guess what the final F is? Fucking.
How did I know? We've never even covered this, but how did I know?
Sex, if we want to keep it PG. I don't know what your podcast rating is. I guess we've dropped some curse words. So
this podcast is rated whatever the fuck Katie wants it to be because I don't censor myself. Like someone asked me that, like, are we allowed to cut? I'm like, have you heard me? Have you heard how I fucking talk?
Fucking like that. Like, and this was probably one of the most healing conversations. Again, going back to the deathbed conversation with my mom, where it was funny, like she was just like kind of going through like a list of all the areas where I've been like, that's so bigoted, but whatever. So like she was going like through this kind of running list I had in my head, like talking about like she brought up so my best friend from med school, shout out to Rob, and his husband Shiva, like she brought them up, like just out of the blue, and was like, like I just love Rob and Shiva so much. And I just think, and this is something she had never ever said in her, pious self. But because she was, always like, yeah, I love gay people, but oh, it's wrong. But she was like, I just love their love for each other, and just like love is so sacred. And I just see them doing such incredible things in their life and having a beautiful family someday. And like she's speaking like all of this stuff. And mind you, my mom also did call herself a prophet. And so it's like, and as much as I love to resent her for saying things and them coming true, it's like, yes, like, okay, a lot of the things that she said, like that I would marry a good old Texas boy. And I was like, F that. It's like, I like the exotic European and South American breeds or Latinos. Like, give me anything but American. Like, it's important, of course. I meet a boy from Dallas and the rest is history. But like she's going and she's like, okay, gay marriage, check. And then we talked about the Holy Spirit orgasm. Like, she's talking about that. She started talking about just how sex is such an because I mean we grew up like very much in the church, like you wait to have sex till marriage, masturbation is a sin, you shouldn't touch yourself, all this nonsense. And so here she is, like talking to my sister Edel and me and being like, whoo, sex is vital. Like, you've got to get it in. I was just like, yeah, thank you. I was just like, and yeah, there was also a lot of TMI about her and my dad. Was like, I wish I could block that stuff out, but unfortunately I can't.
Comes with the territory. With the good,
Yes.
there's the not so good.
Like, it's okay, she's dying. It's like that's the
I'm
death.
like, this is all like that's just bullshit she's talking about. That's not real.
No, that's her, being on the other side. Anyways,
Yeah.
so like she's talking about like how vital sex is for health. And mind you, she's an OB-GYN and she knows this, but for her to like be talking to my sister who isn't married and asking her about her sex partners and like, oh, are you getting it in? Like, oh, good. She's like make sure. I was like, where was this when I was dealing with all the sexual shame, like kind of lurking around in the shadows, sneaking around, trying to hook up with boys,
Yeah, where
but
was
yeah,
this, mom?
right. But again, going back to we had to go through the trauma of the shame, the sexual shame, and all of that, like my grieving process. In a lot of ways, I feel like, especially when we lose our mother, and let me know if any of this rings true for you too, it's like we're releasing a lot of the sexual shame and all that that usually comes from our mother with their passing. And so it's like I had this massive shift in being able to reconcile my relationship with sex. I mean, I have probably a bit more expansive view around sex than the average Christian does, because I mean, I just think sex is like the fourth macronutrient, like carbohydrates, protein, fat, and sex. And, we want a wide variety of foods in our diet. And completely faithful to Sean. Anybody out there saying, like, what are you talking about? Diversity? Like, what I will say is that Coco has been an outlet for me to explore sexual healing, to re-envision what sex means. So sex isn't just intercourse. Sex is the full expression of our most intimate, vulnerable, kinky, whatever side of you that's been suppressed and likely burdened with shame is that sexy side. Like that comes out in all the beautiful ways through sex in the most general term. So it's been a fascinating process, grief. And I have my mom to thank, honestly, for helping me recreate a new narrative with myself around like what my life is about and how to have fun, how to not burn out while creating my legacy and building all of the wild, elaborate dreams that I have, and how to bring people together around the things that, excite me, like food and fitness and all the other F's. And so it's been, yeah, like it's been really special. And the one thing that comes up for me right now as I look at this picture, and this was me doing my very first photo shoot ever. This was for a little children's boutique. I mean, check out that dress. I was like,
You were
Poochie
fierce.
print, blind, like,
That was
so,
full 90s.
oh yeah. I think I was in like fourth or fifth grade there. And, I did that shoot just kind of on a lark because were doing like a little model search for their boutique commercial. And what little girl doesn't want to be like a supermodel? Like that's always low key been my dreams. Like, yeah, I grew up saying I wanted to be a doctor like mommy and daddy, but when I think about like what I truly love, like I love being in front of the camera. Like I love like that's like when I feel most present. And so I brought this picture back out and framed it maybe just like a few months after my mom and I got into therapy together for the first time. And I was like trying to desensitize myself there. Like, she's safe. She loves me. This is good. We love our mom.
If I say it enough, I'm gonna feel it.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna put her by my bedside and like, like channel all the good loving vibes and not all the resentment. We're still healing. But I want to say it was maybe Mother's Day that I snapped a picture of this picture and sent it to my mom. And then I was like, oh, happy Mother's Day. And she's like, oh, thank you for sending that to me. It's like, can you see the love in my eyes? And like when I look at this picture,
She adores you. She loves and adores you. And she showed you in how the ways that she knew how. But
shopping.
she loved you, right? And like,
Oh, absolutely. Like so much, and have to reflect back on like what her upbringing and what familial love looked like. It was harsh, so it's like she was coming from a very different place of what a loving mother looks like, and did the best that she could, like above and beyond.
Well,
And I'm just so grateful.
yeah, because she actually, so unfortunately, a lot of fear was driving both your mom and my mom's love, right? So, like, where that came from is she wanted you to not experience negativity. And so her love for you was so deep, and she thought that she needed to push you in ways where you wouldn't experience negativity, which we now know is not, it's not even reality. Like we're gonna
Right.
face negativity. But like, I actually, it's so interesting because have you seen the Tony Robbins I'm Not Your Guru?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I watched that last weekend. I've been on like an Abraham Hicks kick, like just yesterday I listened to it for hours while like working. And it's like, so Tony Robbins says, like, if you're gonna blame people for the negative things, you have to blame them for the positive. So you have to blame her for becoming this person that you are. Blame her for the fact that you've learned what you want. You have to blame her for the fact that you've learned how to not burn out. You have to blame her for being this loving, kind, expressive human being and showing all this love and compassion to all these people. You have to blame them for everything. If you're going to blame them for one side, you have to blame them for the other side, because you
Yeah.
wouldn't be who you are without them either way. So like, you better blame them for all the shit that you've learned and all the beauty that you are, because you're blaming them for the trauma and you're blaming them for this and that and the other. So you've got to, if you're going to blame, better blame all the way. And it really reminds me of that. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, because okay, maybe you would have been this kind, loving, amazing human being that you are today if you had experienced another mom and another way of being. But like,
I wouldn't be
would
me.
you
I
wouldn't be
wouldn't be.
you with your strength, with your ability to relate to people, with your ability to have compassion while not being a victim. Like, there's like so much about you that is you because of what you experienced. And I think that this is like one of the underlying things that I have learned from trauma is like, I have decided I wouldn't want to change any experience that I've experienced with anything, because each and every single one of those experiences has made me this beautiful human that I've become. And like, you look at some of the experiences and people are like, no one should experience that. And I say, well, I don't fucking agree with that, because guess what? I needed to experience that to become this person that can help others through it, because I needed to experience it because I experienced it, right? Like, we
Right.
needed to experience it because we experienced it. And
Hmm.
we don't live in rainbows and butterfly land. Like, that would be great, but
Right.
like, that's not what this
Can't,
human
should,
experience.
right. That
No,
should just F's it all up. It's like, okay, well, what good is that? Because it did happen.
it didn't.
So we
Yeah, or it
can't
did or it
change it.
didn't. Right. And it's like you're resisting reality, which keeps you in the victimhood, versus being like, no, I should have experienced it because I did experience it, and it's created this beautiful human that I am. And it was painful and it was shitty. And I had a lot of suffering, due to what I went through. But I also see a lot of love and a lot of self-acceptance and a lot like you have become everything that your mom couldn't be for herself, right? Like, we've talked about this,
Hmm.
and like, what a beautiful experience. Like, not only have we become these beautiful humans for ourselves, but we have become what our mothers strived so hard their whole entire being to be for themselves that they couldn't be. And how could we have done that if they weren't the people that they were? We're like leveled up on so many, like so much, because they weren't those versions of themselves. And what a powerful experience. And like, we've talked about this, about how as they've passed, you now just see like the genuine love. You feel the genuine love without the trauma because they're not
Right.
humans and their human experience. So we just get to embody full love. And it's interesting because I think I have, I've gone through many ebbs and flows and many emotions about my mom, but it's like you looking at that picture of your mom, like just with pure love, me reading, the note that my mom left me in a book when I was 5, telling me that, like, just like listen to myself and that's going to be my truth. And you're like, what are you fucking saying to a 5-year-old?
A 5-year-old.
But that's like the literal love that she had for me and that she saw and the light that she saw in me. And it's like you can see in that picture that your mom just sees the radiant light being that you are, and expressed that in a way that was painful sometimes, or maybe a lot of the time.
Right.
And she loved the shit out of you.
Totally. Yep.
And you've always been more than enough, but she didn't think she was enough. So she just wanted to
Exactly.
save you from that feeling of not feeling like enough. So she's like, if I push Reva to this point, she won't ever feel like she's not enough, because I know what it feels like to not be enough.
Right.
And I don't want that for my daughter. And it's
Right.
like this idea, which obviously that's not how it works. Our
Right.
moms did to us what they were trying to not do, like to protect
Right.
us
Like,
from.
I'm pushing you to be better. I'm pushing you to do, like,
Right. But
why is it never good enough?
because it's like, well, if I show you this, then you won't feel that yourself, which is not true.
Mhm. Right.
But it's like when you look at it from that standpoint, it's like, oh, there was so much love. And that is like so healing. And it doesn't negate the trauma that came along with having them as our mothers. And it doesn't negate the experiences or say that they were right or that justify, but it's just like, okay, like I can see the love and it was twisted. It's
Right.
fine. It's fine. It was twisted, but like I can see the love, and that feels so much better than feeling
Hmm.
the resentment and all of that. And
Oh,
I think that
totally.
that's kind of something that like I want to touch on is like, have you noticed that like you only feel the resentment and feel like shit when you sit in all the negativity of like, oh, she didn't love me or I wasn't enough or all of this, versus like, oh, yeah, those behaviors that made me feel like I wasn't enough was because she loved me and that's how she knew how to love.
Hmm. Totally. I mean, and that's something that even came up when we were in counseling together, is that, she was just so like utterly baffled. And that's when I was like, I just have so much compassion for her because she was so baffled at just like, but I love you so much. Like, how do you not get that? I think you're like the most amazing person on the planet. I was like, well, told me this, like all these things left me feeling like shit. And she's like, it was like, does not compute. Like,
Yeah, like symbols, like a monkey clapping symbols.
right. And so I was like, wow. So, I mean, and I knew that in my heart that was like, she just didn't get it. But it was just like to see her just like trying to process it and be like, oh, huh? You still feel that way? Like, the power of words and actions are pretty powerful. So unless you're telling me, and that's something that I think about often and just in my own self dialogue, it's like, it's like I don't think I ever heard my mom like, and she was very humble in everything that she did. And so it's like she wasn't the type to say, like, I'm so proud of myself for doing this or that. And, like I'm sure she did say that she was proud of me, and she did for sure. But like all of those times that you needed to hear it and didn't were weighted much more heavily than the few times I heard it and was like, okay, thanks, and move on. Is like I hadn't built a practice for myself of saying I'm proud of me and I love me just because I am me and not because of what I do. It's like, oh my gosh, what that would have done for me to hear from my mom. It's like, I love you just because you're you. Like that could have gone a long way, but it's fine because like I can see that so clearly in this picture and I can feel that so clearly now and like every waking moment of the day. And my mom like literally never leaves my side and here she is again. Like, oh man, like it's like I can feel her. And so it's like it just makes everything feel like it's okay. It's okay. And it's interesting. It was like that this morning I was having a lot of emotions just kind of move through me. Just yeah, I'm starting my period in a few days. And I think also like building up to like, my mom's memorial next week and just like that release and just a lot of other things that I just constantly working through and very proud of myself on moving through it with ease, as much ease as I possibly can. As I'm going through all of this, it's been like, wow, okay, so it's okay to just be okay. But sometimes okay is good enough. Actually, okay is more than enough because okay is where I am right now. And where I am right now is okay. So I'm okay being okay. And
Yeah.
that was like the little thing that came through this morning as I was like, this, it's like I feel like on this journey and healing from grief, especially from uh losing a mother that there was so much conflicted emotion around, like there's been so many things that I've revisited. And when you revisit these things, like you're re-experiencing it all in that time. And so it's like it doesn't feel okay in my body to experience those moments of feeling such deep rejection and such deep just like pain. Like it doesn't feel okay. But I know that I'm okay because I'm not actually in that and I don't have to stay here and I can allow this feeling to be present and honor it and breathe through it and move through it and maybe eat some extra Trader Joe's dark chocolate peanut butter cups when I need to and it's all okay.
Yeah, it's like this is interesting because it's almost like, so I have done this whole like rewriting your story, and I've talked to people about this, and people don't, a lot of people are like, wait, what do you mean, like rewrite your story and act like things didn't happen? And like, and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is like, so we revisit a lot of different things in throughout our life, right? And we have these revelations of like, oh, yeah, like it would have been really nice if my mom would have told me how proud she was of me and like that I am just like a worthy being like this person that I am. But the thing is like, first off, one thing I want to say is like, yeah, she could have said all of those things, but because she wasn't in that state of being, that would have probably caused more confusion because you probably wouldn't have believed her anyway because she wasn't an embodiment of it. So like we're like, it would have been so good if my mom would have like told me this and this and this, but like how could they have? Because even if they did, they didn't believe it themselves. So we were wishing that our parents then didn't have the experiences that they had and that they had a whole different upbringing and that they didn't feel the way they felt because they would have told us and there would have still been this disconnect, right? So like I think that that's worth mentioning because I think that we wish that our parents did all of these different things, but the thing is they weren't doing it for themselves. So it still would have been like something is fucked up. Like even if they did
Mhm.
all the right things, said the right things,
Right,
there's still that disconnect because they weren't doing it for themselves. So we
right,
wouldn't have believed it still. Like
right.
because if you're telling me I'm enough, but you're over here shitting on yourself, I'm probably not enough, right? Like that's like,
Mhm.
but then you go to this idea of rewriting your story is like, it's not to discount what you have experienced, but to rewrite it from this place of like, oh, I do know that it was coming from a place of love always. It always was. It just was skewed because of how they grew up. And so instead of ever making it about us, like changing the story that it was always love or it was the lack of love for themselves. It had nothing to do with us. And it's not, and the reason I talk about this is because, like, for instance, if we talk about, even like the sexual abuse for me, it was like, yeah, it shouldn't have happened, or like that, like there's something wrong with me, or like no, it's like literally just the space that that person was in, and turning it into, it was never about me, and it was never a lack of love for me that this happened to me. It was a lack of love for themselves and the way that they experience life. And it doesn't mean that like we are not acknowledging what they did, but it's just about creating feelings within ourselves that feel good. And so rewriting our story from this place of like, yeah, they loved me to the capacity that they did. And it wasn't ever coming from a place of like, I was bad and they were trying to hurt me. It was coming from a place, especially like with your mom, it was always coming from a place of love. And she didn't know because she didn't experience truly that love within herself. So she was loving you in the only way she knew how. And I just think like that feels better always,
Right.
like always,
100%.
versus being like, this was really hurtful. And like this, like it's of course important to acknowledge that, but like I think what we do is we revisit that shit all the time from that same hurtful lens
Mhm.
versus from that adoration that she had for you, and that was the only way she knew how.
Exactly.
And like she still loved you to no end the way she knew how.
Hmm.
And you suffered trauma from it and you had to fucking work through it and all of that. Like we're not discounting that. But like we create so much more hurt and like when we revisit these situations in our body, because
Hmm.
there's still that sense of like not being enough, not being loved, not, and it's like, no, no,
Not feeling
no.
safe. I think that's
Yeah.
been a big part of how that trauma manifested and dis-ease in different ways of not feeling safe in my body. So, like, extrapolate to the bodybuilding. It's like, okay, well, I have to validate myself to mom and others by winning and becoming a pro because, her big fear was that I wouldn't be respected as a doctor if I wasn't board certified. Well, maybe I'll be respected as a bodybuilder who's also a doctor who's doing all of these things at once because the more things you do, the better, status pile you have, right? And so it's like, that embodiment of not enoughness that, started with mom not feeling it for herself, and then me trying to meet her approval and make myself more than enough by doing these behaviors that led to me feeling not enough in my body because now my body is burnt out and feels like shit. And it's a vicious cycle. And so, really getting back to the root of it is just learning how to feel good in our bodies. And that's something that, I mean, now we're much more aware of that. Meditation is much more popular and like all of these different mindfulness exercises. But most people don't know. And I don't think my mom really did because I mean, she rarely slowed down. Like, most people don't know how to just feel good in their bodies and just sit with themselves and feel good.
Oh, 100%. And like what I would say is it's almost like, your mom was of the belief that other people had to respect, which put you in the belief that other people had to respect you, when the whole reality is no one needs to respect you except for yourself. And then what you're doing is you're trying to please everyone and do, which makes you respect yourself even less because you're not in alignment with who you are and what feels good. And you're just putting your body through the ringer. And so it's like this major message, like what a beautiful lesson mom taught you by like wanting everyone else's respect, but not respecting herself and her body, making you believe you needed everyone else's respect, which led you to not respecting your body, which then led you to burning out and being in the only space where like your only option was to learn how to respect your body, right? Like you burnt out to the point where it was like, guess what? You can't fucking show up for anyone or anything in the way that they want. So learn to respect your body and we're going to shut you down, which it's so funny because of course I went through that same thing, right? Like I was looking for love and respect from other people and I wanted to show up so that people would respect me and see my worth and my value. Yet that whole time we were just proving that we weren't worthy, we weren't valuable, we didn't respect ourselves until our body said, "Really? Okay, we're going to burn out to the point where you're going to have to learn to respect us and respect what we need and respect us when we are in a non-respectable space, right? Like when we can't
Mm-hmm.
perform, when we don't
Right.
look our best,
Oh
when we
yeah.
don't feel our best, like learn to respect me now. Like learn how to respect me when you absolutely don't want to respect me. And
Mhm.
how could we have done that? How could we have had that respect for ourselves if we didn't learn that? Like maybe
Yeah.
sure, maybe we could have learned it as children, but whatever. We can't change the way that we grew up.
Right.
So it was
Exactly.
like necessary. And I want to say it's like not that other people that have been taught this and like grew up doing this don't value it, but it's kind of like you don't appreciate the sun unless there's the rain kind of thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so do you actually appreciate the self love and the self respect and the self worth and valuing yourself as much if you haven't been on the other side?
Right.
And I don't know that you do. I think
Mhm.
what I think in that capacity is because we've experienced such low lows, we get to experience higher highs where some people kind
Mhm.
of are like here, which is
Mhm.
cool. That's their path and that's how they should experience it. And I'm not saying like that it's a better path or a worse path or like a higher path or whatever,
It's a path.
but this life, the people that I connect with, for whatever reason, I don't connect with anyone that's here. I just don't. That's just not the way that my life goes. I'm over here with connecting with people and we're like kind of like looking like I wonder what that life would have looked like. But then it's like that's their journey. So like if
Mhm.
our parents would have been like all that we needed and all of these things, we would have kind of probably been like this. And maybe that would be cool. Or maybe we're like, we're doing this. Like
Mhm.
we felt the high
Like just like
highs.
things like I love roller coasters. Like literally, like I'm coaster head. Like I like we have season passes at Six Flags. Like seriously, let's go sometime. Actually, you don't
Yeah.
like it, but it's fine.
Well,
We
no,
can do some of like the cool rides.
I'm the same way. I just don't know if my elderly body can handle.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. But just don't go when your nervous system is in a dysregulated state. Like the last time I went, I was like, this was a bad idea, but it's fine. Um, but yeah, it's like the highs, like, it's like you're on those highs and we're experiencing all of the excitement and the joy and the rush and coming down. It's still like we can still, and this is something that I've been trying to be more mindful of in those low moments of just like reminding myself that I'm still wired into all of the joy and abundance and all of that, even though that's not what I'm physically feeling. It's like just as I'm feeling down here doesn't mean this is who I am. It's just part of this roller coaster that I'm on. And like when your natural frequency, it's like we can attune to this frequency and being at the top of the hill of the roller coaster and all the excitement of what's to come in the next 90 seconds of this ride, like we can still tap into all of those feelings even down here. it's a lot more challenging. It's part of being human in this practice of mindfulness that we get to continually develop. But that's been, I think, the lesson for me, especially this week, and just a natural hormonal low. Like just as a woman, it's like we are on this cycle naturally. And so I think we have just a natural innate ability built within our biology to really find that level of, I think, if this is how a lot of people go and this was like normal, let's say this is ease. Like, wouldn't it be nice if we constantly had this like grounded level of ease in everything that we did, you know? And so that's like what I've been more mindful of tuning my vibrations into. It's like, all right, well, where's the ease meter at? Like, where can I find that in this moment of feeling like not so great? Okay, there's ease and being able to throw on my bathrobe and just live in my bathrobe this week. Fabulous. Like, I love it. It's like there's ease and being able to literally just like have fresh water come out the tap. Like, hello, that's not to be taken for granted. Like, there's so much ease that we can tune into when we're mindful to do that. And, you know, ease has been my word for years. And I'm finally learning like ease has always been here. It's just a matter of me slowing down enough to be able to grasp it.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think ease can be part of all of this, right? Like, so ease can be, we can have ease in the lows, we can have ease in the highs. And I think ease equals not resisting, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we know we're going to have the highs and the lows, and thinking that the highs or lows shouldn't happen is what creates dis-ease. When we're like over here thinking like, I shouldn't be feeling this low, or I shouldn't be feeling these negative feelings, that creates dis-ease with those feelings. And so I think like there's nothing but ease on a roller coaster. Like, I mean, yes, the upward climb, but like it's being powered. And so like
Mm,
if you're like accepting it is kind of being powered by the momentum of the drop, right? So like, so if we slowed that drop down, it would be so much harder to get up, which is what we do, right? As we start to slow down, like go down, we try to slow that down and resist it. And it's like, and then the climb up is so much harder. But like with a roller coaster, if you just allow it all, it kind of just has the momentum building, and it like gets back up, it goes back down, it gets back up. And
mm-hmm.
it's like, I find that that's where I'm like tuning in and tapping into that, is like, oh, of course. Like, I'm not going to resist as these negative emotions are happening, because of course they're going to happen. Of course I'm going to feel this way when I think about this. Like, of course I'm going to feel sad when I think about like certain aspects of my life. And of course I'm going to maybe feel sad when it's like my mom's anniversary coming up, and then like not resisting it, but like, of course, like, and then I'm like, and then it's like, okay, and then I'm feeling good again. And it's like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that ease, and I do think that there is power in creating comfort for yourself, like you were saying, so that like you can really allow yourself to move through it, or focusing on something that already just naturally has so much ease. Like, oh, I'm turning on the tap and like it's just flowing. Like, that is so much ease. And I think that that's like a beautiful kind of like, almost like, again, referencing Abraham Hicks, is like focusing on something completely different that
Mm-hmm.
has like no emotional meaning, to
Right.
like get you back into that space. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's a super helpful thing to if if you have so much momentum behind the dis-ease of something, creating momentum around ease, and you're not going to create the momentum of ease around the thing that you have so much dis-ease with in the moment. Like that's where I
Right.
think like we try to hammer that like into like having
Hmm.
ease in that moment. And it's like, you know, Abraham Hicks is like, Esther just like listens to the air conditioner. Yes,
Right.
like just tune into the freaking air conditioner and like distract
Right.
yourself,
Whatever it
right?
takes.
Yeah. And it's like it's so funny because yes, that may be avoiding, but it's like, or maybe it's this isn't the time to try and tackle that problem. Because, like, when
Right.
you're angry with your spouse, is that the time to have the conversation?
Mhm.
No, probably not. It's probably time to go for a walk or like create distance and then come back after you've slept on it and you're like, oh, maybe there doesn't need to be so much emotion behind this. Let's have a rational conversation, you know, kind of thing. And so it's like same thing with ourselves and healing is like maybe I don't need to hammer this out right now. Maybe I need to create a little bit of ease in my life by doing something by turning on the tap or going for a walk and like one of my favorite things to do is just watching a bird. Oh
Mm.
my goodness. Like you watch a bird go through life and just like fly and they like flap a bit and then they just like glide and you're like, the fuck? What am I doing over here? Just like flapping, 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 flapping. And like, okay, glide. Okay, flapping, flapping, flapping. And you're like, oh, I'm using like so much fucking energy when I don't need to because I want to
Mhm.
change like something. Like the birds aren't like, well, let me flap into like the wind. Let me flap into the wind. Let me flap into the wind. No, they're like, let me use the wind and go fucking the opposite direction. And when the wind stops, I'll turn around. Or when it changes, I'll glide with that. And it's like, yeah, like there's something
Yeah.
to that.
Power of downstream thought. It's
Yeah.
like Abraham talks about.
Yeah,
Get me
100%.
up, try and swim upstream. Unless you're a salmon, that's not going to be very productive for you.
It's going to be very fun. We've all done it. That's how you burn out, my friend. Like,
Yay. Yes.
so I
Yes.
have a
That's,
question for you so we can kind of wrap this up.
Mhm.
What, and I know this is kind of like a common question that people ask, but like, what advice would you give from this standpoint that you are now to little Reva that was feeling like she wasn't enough and had to do all the things? And what advice would you give to Reva who was grieving the loss in the beginning? Like those two at two standpoints, like knowing all that you know now, because I think that that is what can really help someone else is like hearing what you would say to yourself. And I think it'll be beautiful for you anyways, as well.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, to little Reva who never felt good enough, who always felt like she was having to do more, to do bigger, to be the best, to be worthy. I would just tell her, and this is interesting. Actually, I just had a flashback to a really powerful moment I had as a kid. And just look in the mirror, like just spend some time with yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror. And this is something I actually share in a talk that I give is I open it up with this exercise of, all right, pull out your phone or a mirror and just look at yourself and observe who you are. And I mean, it's kind of hard. Like it's when I first did this as a little kid, I spent a lot of time alone and entertaining myself. Probably why I'm like alone on my phone, entertaining myself half the time these days. But I remember looking in the mirror and like staring at myself for so long that it's like I saw beyond myself into this realm of like just all. And I felt the bigness of my spirit. And it was just like, this is me. And like looking at my face and being like, this is Reva. Mm. And then I was like, but this okay, so this is Reva. People see when they look at me. But like when I like close my eyes and I tune into who Reva is, it's like all of this. And I wouldn't have had that experience had I not sat down and just like looked at myself. And so like I feel like, yeah, like just tell myself like just go meet yourself where you are and look at how big you are. So you are a bright ray of light that just fills every room. And that's not something you have to do or try hard or muster up the energy to do. It's just you being you. And that's enough. Yeah. And to the grieving me, and it's funny, I had the message come through right as I looked at my little thing here on my desk. So to grieving Riva, who's struggling and revisiting all the stories and just grappling with more than I needed to. Answer is just let that shit go. I don't know if that comes through okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like half colored in. It's, squirrel brain got distracted and stopped coloring. So let it go. You don't have to, like, I think sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, it's like we talk about grief and like we're in this grief and we're just gonna be in it and we're gonna work through the grief, we're grieving, mourning, but you can let it go. Like, don't worry, grief will come back when it's ready. Don't you worry. Like, you don't have to hold on to this
It's like,
precious, precious little grief nugget. Like, like no, like let it go, release it, whatever part of it that you can release in the moment. And releasing doesn't have to be work. It can simply just be breathing, going for a walk, like all the different things that we've talked about. But the early grief periods, it's like so disoriented and you're so out of your body and so just like and the feeling of total turmoil. It's hard to remember that you have such simple, easily accessible means of feeling better, and that's letting go.
yeah, I love that. And I like what also comes to mind in that is like, I feel like people have like the sense of shame when they're grieving to feel joy.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that they shouldn't be feeling joy in moments of joy. And I think like a powerful thing to like share is like grant yourself permission to feel joy and allow yourself to feel joy when joy is presented to yourself when you're grieving, because you should feel joy too. Like you shouldn't like grief looks different for everybody. And I'm not saying that like you're gonna feel joyous all the time, but I almost think that people block themselves from feeling joy because they think that they shouldn't be feeling joy in such a in a time of sadness. And it's like, well, yeah, but you are, because you're supposed to have the balance. And so granting yourself permission to let it go, granting yourself permission to feel joy when joy is being presented to you and not discounting it. Like I literally see people like really not allowing themselves to experience the joy that's right in front of them because they're suffering from a loss or something like that. And it's like I I think I did that for a little bit where it was like, well, I can't feel happy right now. And it's like, yeah, but there are things to feel happy about. And like I shouldn't feel bad about feeling happy just because I also have a lot of sadness right now. Like
Yeah.
that's, and no one would want us to, right? Like nobody wants us to like sit there and be crying in a room constantly like about their death. Like nobody wants that. Nobody wants us to be in pain. And I think that that's like this other thing is like it's almost like a self-righteous thing. Like I have to be in pain because I lost them and like I'm going to sit in this pain, and it's like yeah, but no too. Like, but no
Right.
too. Like you
Right.
can like be
Going
happy and
back to
like
the does that feel good though?
yeah, right. And it doesn't. And it's like it's almost like forceful in a way. Like I have to say, and I know we were supposed to kind of close it out, but I wanted to ask you if you experienced this because I think I experienced this where I almost forced myself to go back to negative thoughts and the loss and like all the like what I'm not going to experience and all this stuff because it was like I need to feel this pain.
Mm,
Like
yeah. I mean, I did
not
that a little bit.
consciously, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely, like when I think of like some of the more painful moments and like my mom at the hospital, like it was just there were definitely times where I lingered there too much in those thoughts and I was just like, that doesn't feel good. Okay, let's move on. Like it's
yeah, like
just
what am I doing here? Like
yeah, it's
what
like
is
why like why? Like
what is
we're we
this?
we're we're done with that
Yeah.
moment. We've extracted what we needed to from it and we can let it go. But I mean, not to say it's never going to pop up again, but I think it's, like you said, just so important to recognize that we do have the option to find joy instead. And there are a lot of moments that were joyful with my mom that I can choose to lean into in any given moment.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, right? And it's like
Hmm.
and we can do that even when we're sad.
Yeah,
Or we can sit in the
absolutely.
sadness, whatever we want to do. But we have a
Yeah,
choice. That's the
exactly.
cool part. That's what I like. It's like there's no right or wrong answer here, but we have a choice.
Hmm. What feels good? That like ultimately that's what I calibrate to. It's like, does it feel good? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Then
Let's do it.
go there. Yep.
Yeah, I love it. So last thing that I like to do with my guests is ask about like, okay, so what do you think this episode should be named? Let's come up with it. I have a feeling that like I've already thought about this, but like, what do you think? Because I think it's fun to have like a fun episode name. I know where my mind goes.
My mind goes to like fucking the Holy Spirit. That's just where my mind on. But we don't have like that isn't the greater theme of the episode. That's just what my mom wanted to remind me of in this moment. Um, but
I mean, my mind always goes to I'm so glad my mom died because I feel
yeah,
like people are what are they gonna think? Like that's like such a like I
right,
gotta hear it, you know? Like I feel like
right.
and I do think that it does describe this episode just
Very
in a
well.
whole, not in a sense of just like our experience of how we met, but like the reality of like, look at us, how we
Hmm.
who we
I
have
love it.
become. So like, and I had a feeling that was like, but I feel like that's like the way I like to close it out in a little lightheartedness of how can we what's a good way to name this episode. So like,
Nailed it.
but do you feel that? I'm so glad my
Nailed
mom
it.
died.
Nailed it.
Yes, I'm so glad my mom died and we love them and
Yes.
they created these beautiful humans that we are. What a like
Yeah,
an amazing experience.
totally. This has been so incredible, and I'm so grateful to get to spend this time with you and your audience and to be able to share some nuggets of wisdom and experience that I know will help people through some traumatic times and just let them know that they're not alone and that there is joy available and that, we see you and we see all of the love and the light in you. So thank you.
And I want to say thank you so much for just being willing to share your story, being willing to share vulnerable parts of your journey, and of course, your beautiful wisdom. I have been blessed to get so much of this in my own personal life in relationship with you. And I have gained so much from my own personal relationship with you. So I just thank you for coming on and sharing that with others because I feel like it's hoarding you if I don't share this with others, and that's not right. And so I just like from the bottom of my heart want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for being you, for doing the work that you have done on you, for allowing yourself to shine your light and be the youest version of you that you can be in this moment, and just radiate the love outwardly and allow other people to feel that love and light, because that in and of itself is so healing and it's so inspirational. And to know that you can come out of the other side of so many experiences, so much burnout, so much, loss and all of that, and come out and be the radiant human being that you are, like that in and of itself is a superpower and a gift to the world. And so I just want to say thank you so much. And I love you from the depths of my soul.
Breathe that all in. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I love you so much, my sweet sister.
I love you to your core. And thank you again for joining me on this. I'm so glad my mom is dead journey.
Yes. We gotta have dead mom celebration.
Yes. And really quickly, go ahead and let people know where they can find you.
Yes, so you guys can find me on Instagrams. So I'm kind of active on both handles, but main one is Gimme Some Coco, Gimme, some spelt traditionally SOME, Coco, COCO. Gimme Some Coco. And that's pretty much the only social place that I'm active. But I do have a YouTube channel that I started a while ago. So like you'll get some really good background information on what functional medicine is and gut health and stuff on that page. So that's the Riva Wellness, RIVA, like my first name, Wellness YouTube channel. And then yeah, partly on Facebook, LinkedIn. Nope. Yep, that's it. And then where else on the webs?
You have a website?
Oh yeah, website. Website is rivawellness.com. How can I forget about that? And then also, of course, the book. Last one is this guy. So the book you can find on Amazon. So this, and I think that covers all the things.
Yay. And I will put all that information in the show notes so that people can click all the links and do everything Riva, because they should do it. Bask in all that is Riva.
Oh,
So I love
I'm
you
gonna bask
so
in all
much.
that is Riva.
I love you so
I'm
much,
feeling
and
all of
thank you again.
You're so welcome. I love you.